There we go. So I am Guillaume Rattel. I'm the executive director of CHCI. And before we get started, I'll ask members of the board who are also a member of the Global Humanities Institute committee to introduce themselves, as well as Aaron, who's also a member of the staff of CHCI. So Kathy, if you want to go, maybe.
Yes, just briefly, I'm Kathy Woodward. I'm director of the Simpson Center for the Humanities at the University of Washington in Seattle, and I'm chairing this committee. I love this committee.
Lydia? Yeah.
Lydia Liu. I'm at Columbia University, a former director of the Institute for Comparative Literature and Society. I serve on the CHCI board. I'm also a member of the GHI committee. Very nice to meet you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Fay, and I'm CHCI's Membership and Diversity Officer. Great to see you all.
Okay, so our plan for what is a relatively short meeting was to give you, and I was going to do that, to give you an overview of what a GHI is, a Global Humanities Institute, and of the application process. And Kathy Woodward afterwards will share more details about what the committee is looking for in terms of the nature of the project, models of collaboration, inclusivity, dissemination of outcomes, those sort of questions that might help those who are interested in putting together a proposal to think about the work they are doing now. And we were expecting to have a PI from a current Global Humanities Institute. I don't know whether she will join us or not, but since it's a short meeting and that we want to leave time for questions as much as we could, I think that'll be okay if she doesn't join us. But if she does, we'll give her a few minutes to talk about her project and share with you her experience as a former applicant and now a PI for a Global Humanities Institute, with what would be some advice for this process that you might be interested in from the perspective of someone who's just gone through it. So what I wanted to do first, and I will share some links as I speak, because a lot of the of what I want to talk about today is already online. We just want to expand to answer some questions you might have on those materials that you might have already seen online. If you have not seen them, I'll share them as I speak. But I wanted mostly to expand on questions you might have about aspects of this process. So the first thing is to give you a very brief overview of what the GHIs are, and please forgive me for being a little slow because I need to jump into Windows. I wasn't expecting to do this from this computer. I had a problem. So we launched the GHIs in 2018, and we've hosted the first one in 2019. And I put a link when you can see kind of a list of what's taken place so far. That will also give you an idea for the kind of projects that have been successful and the kind of partnerships that have been built already. So this is a very valuable resource to see what's taken place. There's been 8 Global Humanities Institutes so far. 5 of them have concluded. They were part of the first cycle of the grant. And there are 3 that are ongoing, 2 that are kind of at the middle stage, and 1 that is at the pre-meeting stage, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. The main institute has not taken place yet, but will soon, next year. So what is a Global Humanities Institute? Just to give you a very kind of overall idea of what this program is. So a Global Humanities Institute is a research project in between 3 to 4 core partners. It's a research project in the humanities that's lasts for about 18 months, and that's centered around an institute that generally lasts from 10 to 15 days. and bring together 15 to 35 participants around a topic that benefits from this sort of like international collaboration in the humanities. So that's a very, very big picture. I want to say a few more words about the institute itself. When I said it had 25 to 35 participants, some of the participants are going to come from the institutes that have partnered to organize the event. What we ask is that it's a 4 maximum coming from those institutions, and the rest are coming from people who answer a call for participation online, and are going to be mostly early career scholars and graduate students. So that's for kind of like who is participating in the main activity. Now there are 2, so I keep talking about a main activity. There are 2 other components to a GHI. There is a pre-meeting, which usually is the meeting of the organizer, kind of early on in the process, where the programming of the main institute solidify, as well as the shape of the call that I just mentioned, the call for participants that will be published before that institute can take place. And then at the end of the process, the third component is what I would describe in very general term as a post-institute activity. And the reason why I'm general is because in the past, it has taken several forms. It can be a follow-up meeting. It can be something around publication. And I think the committee is open to various forms for that post-institute activity. The point generally being that it serves to amplify the outcomes of the main institute, and to share and disseminate the outcomes within the CHCI membership, but also beyond that. As I said, there are resources that are available online, and I want to put just to make sure. I'm going to share a link to the call itself. So here it is. Again, sorry for the delay as I juggle between computers. Here it is. So this is the link to the call, and I assume that this is where you might have most question is about elements of this call. So I won't go into the details because you can read that. If you have any question, you can reach out to me directly after this about if you have any question about any part of this. I wanted to just mention briefly a couple aspects of this. One of them is that the components of the application itself, there are 2 main parts. There's a narrative, which is 7 to 12 pages long, and you can look at the call. It details what's supposed to go in there. And then there is a budget and a scope of work for the financial aspect of the project. And I want to point out that there is a template budget that's linked from the call, and that turned out to be useful to applicants in previous years. Just a couple things that I know you're interested in from the sessions that we organized last year. We had questions about that, so I'm going to kind of preempt those questions. Generally, the PI for Global Humanities Institute is the director of the main applying center. That person doesn't have to be the intellectual leader of the project. That is the administrative contact, and that tends to be the PI. The person who's as I was saying, the intellectual lead of the project can be a co-PI, but that's the format that we use. I know that you're also interested in numbers of applicants and success rates and those sort of things. So I'll just say that we've changed the way in which we have organized this application process. So we don't have reliable data for this. I will just share a couple numbers from the last 2 years and explain the difference between the two. So like last year, we had 8 applications, and 1 Global Humanities Institute was awarded. The language we use, generally, it can be 1 or 2, up to 2, depending on the kind of applications we get. And that was down from the previous year, where we had 26 applications, but I should say 26 expressions of interest, because we had a different process in which there was a very short document that could be sent to us couple pages, and that led to a second stage. We have done away with that process and are now asking for full proposal, which explains why there are less, because it's a little bit more work. But I think that's been beneficial to everyone to do it that way. So I cannot give you statistics, just those numbers. That's what we have to work from. I'm sure you might have many other questions about partnerships, who you can work with, those sort of things, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. But for now, I'm going to ask Kathy to say a little more about what the committee is looking for and the nature of the projects and what we mean by collaboration, inclusivity, and access to outcomes. So Kathy.
Right. Thanks very much, and very, very good to see you all, hear your names, if not your faces. What do we mean by inclusive collaboration? When we applied for funds to the Mellon Foundation, we were insistent upon the fact that we wanted to be as inclusive as possible, and first and foremost under the rubric of the Global Humanities Institutes. We want to see partnerships among centers and institutes from different continents, if possible. In other words, really expand to the extent possible your reach globally. This is so important. And for us, it instates also the value of understanding that collaboration has to take place over and beyond, in addition to looking at nation states. The regions and the localities are very, very important to us. So that's first and foremost. The partners that you include, please, to the extent that they can be global, this will be a model for others and for our own research as well for years to come. That's number one. Number two, we want you to think in terms of inclusive collaboration, in terms of the participants. Guillaume has already mentioned that the participants, many of them will come to you by application, and we want you to put an emphasis on early career researchers. That includes, say, doctoral candidates, as well as assistant professors. But not just people who are involved in higher education. You might want to, in addition, include people who are in some measure co-creators of the knowledge that you are in the process of producing. So think again more broadly and more inclusively as you put together your project. Number three, we'd like to really encourage you to think, and in a way, I think this is the hardest, of possible new models of how you might put the work together during the institute itself. That is to say, the 10 to 2 weeks that you will have typically in the summer, whichever summer you have. Think in terms of what might be a new model for bringing people together. One of the projects that we funded, this under the rubric of extractivist legacies, one of that particular project has embedded, has embedded an artist in all of the work that they're doing. A very, very, very nice model. So number three, and then number four, in terms of the outcomes, that very awkward term, the products, another very awkward term of the research that you'll be undertaking. Please do think again of how you're going to be able to essentially circulate this scholarship. It might be publication, but you might be thinking of having the creation of databases that would be very, very helpful to people. You might, of course, think of being of creating a website in which you're going to be able to disseminate what you've learned. What you've learned might be the creation of what we've come to call a living syllabus. That's just crucial for people. And in and of itself, that really comes to collect what you've done and reinforces it as time goes on. we've seen that in some cases, and it's inspiring. So those are some of the ways we're thinking about inclusive collaboration, and don't want to mystify that. You can imagine it. Some of the titles of the projects I think have been inspiring in and of themselves. Global Racism, with the lead partner, organizing partner from Colombia is one of them. And Lydia, I might just turn to you, coming from Colombia, and ask you if there's anything that you'd like to add at this point, and then we can turn to Erin quickly.
Kathy, I think you covered most of the ground. I just, since Anupama Rao isn't here, I just wanted to mention that the Institute at Columbia is working with a number of institutes in Asia, in particular in Beijing and in Delhi, and I believe 2 African partners. So it's a very interesting group of people. They are going to hold their, I think, a conference in Delhi in December. Now, sometimes people encounter issues. For instance, their collaboration with Tsinghua University in Beijing has run into issues because the Indian government doesn't issue visas to Chinese citizens. The Chinese government wouldn't issue visas to Indians. So they make things very difficult. So we are well aware of this, of the issues. I think if Anu were here, she would give you more details as to how to overcome these problems. We do encourage, like, I think, Kathy, in the past, we require that there should be 3 continents. I think we are more flexible now, but we still encourage this kind of collaboration, but we are aware that you can run into issues. I just bring it up and to anticipate some questions. Yeah, that's all.
Hi, everyone. I'll just say that I know that there's a dissemination aspect to these proposals, and I'm in charge of communications for the consortium. And so you don't need to consult with me during the writing your proposal, that whole process. But if and when you are accepted as a recipient, I'm happy to work with you to execute your plan, how you might want to do any dissemination to the membership, like written products, events, things like that. We can help realize those plans. Yeah, and I'll hand it back to Gil.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what Lydia was saying, yes, we used to ask for representation of a number of continents. I think we're still looking for that, but we've been flexible with where things take place, and we have had to adapt. In the case of the one you mentioned, I know, for instance, that the PI has been running into issue for holding a post-institute activity in South Africa, and we are relocating it to New York for that reason. So things can happen, and just not just with COVID, but for other reasons of, as you were mentioning in the question of visa. We understand that things can happen, so we can adapt when things like that happen. But the nature of the project remains very much international in nature. With that said, I know this is a very brief overview, but we do have quite a bit of information available online. I've tried to put links to the main things you might be interested in. But for the rest of the meeting and the few minutes we are happy to expand on some of this, see what your questions are, and we are happy to answer them. So if you have any question, please just unmute yourself or raise your hand, and we'll do this.
I have a question. I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm. For participants, early career scholars, but the as you put it, co-creators of the knowledge, those do not have to be early career, I assume.
So do you mean people who are in the original partnership between humanities centers and institute?
Not necessarily. I mean, if we're looking for people who are involved in the project that we're doing who are not academics.
Mm-hmm. So your question
who would be applying to participate? Okay, in other words, we have the planning people from all the different places. Then we put out the open call. Can we include in that open call non-academics who are not just non-academics, say artists from the area again, that kind of thing. Participation from people who are not humanities academics. Okay.
Yes, and there is some language in the call about that, and I'm happy to clarify it. To say that people who are non-academics, like artists is a good example that's happened before, they wouldn't count toward the total that we're looking for in terms of participation of early career scholars. So you wouldn't have to count them toward that total of 25 to 35, half of them being, answering to a call, if that makes sense.
Okay, great. Yes.
It's not because you bring some of those people that you would have necessarily less early career and graduate students participating.
I'd like to add one more thing before we go to Ulka, and that is that when we think of an open call, we're thinking of an open call to the members of the consortium of the humanities centers and institutes, so that the people who are connected to our centers but are not leading this intellectual project will be able to benefit from it intellectually, and that network is building that strong network is just very, very important to us.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I can't have my video on. I'm outside in the pouring rain, so my apologies. I had a question. I had an initial meeting with some people to discuss, a possibility for collaboration. And one thing we were wondering, like, say we have two countries, Pakistan and Senegal. Like, if we only can bring 4 people from each institute, that means once we choose a location, like say we choose Pakistan for the location, then is it right that only 4 people from Senegal would be part of that panel? That feels less collaborative than if we could bring more people in. Or am I misreading something?
No, you're not misreading. So if you were, just to restate your example, if you were to have partners in Pakistan and Senegal, and you organize an institute, the main institute in Pakistan, yes, the expectation is that you would bring no more than 4 people from Senegal. And the reason for this is that we really want to open up the participation to other CHCI members, or actually non-members for that matters, because that can also happen. So that's a way for us to ensure that the participants are not only the core organizers of the project. So I think that's how it works. Kathy, yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, Kathy says yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I see Juliet, maybe it was next in line. Yeah.
Hi. So I've been thinking about budgets, and we've been talking about this at the IS, and thinking about the international travel costs and all that. And are you finding that for that, I think it's 200,000, is that the limit this year? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's about 200.
Yeah. And are you finding that people are able to do all the activities within that? I'm just thinking about whether we're going to be needing to think about going beyond.
Well,
to fund this.
Well, this is something that we find is becoming increasingly a concern in the organization and in the choice of the location where the main institute can take place. Yeah, it's definitely something that to take into consideration, both in terms of the location and the length of where you would want to hold an institute. And so it used to be, I think, in most of the GHIs that we've done before, that the pre-meeting was taking place, was hosted by the main applicant, and then the institute itself will take place typically outside of the US. I don't know if this is something that we're going to keep seeing, or whether people are going to reorganize in order to make sure to keep the costs under control because of travel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Kathy.
I'd like to add something to that too. Two things. It might be that the people applying from other centers and institutes would find that their center or institute might partner on the costs of travel. I would certainly do that. I'd be thrilled to have somebody come from the University of Washington, for example. And number two, one of the GHIs is experimenting with, instead of bringing in the keynote speakers for a long period of time during the institute, they're having the keynote speakers speak via Zoom. And therefore, they're saving all of that money in terms of travel, accommodation, et cetera, where the honorarium would be larger, of course, because it's a keynote. I thought that was very creative.
Okay, thank you.
Before I go to the next question, let me add something to that. Is that during COVID, we've seen all sorts of plans to use hybrid to, deal with the issues that we were having, that people could just not meet in person. And it was our hope that something, some model could come out of that. At this point, I think the general agreement is that the benefits are not that great for something like a Global Humanities Institute and a workshop, and complicated, and have a cost that might be as important as the travel cost that you're mentioning, depending on how you want to do this. So I think the committee is open for people to come up with different solutions, and that's going back to the model for collaboration that Kathy was talking about, in a more technical aspect of it, I guess. But we haven't found something that replaces like a core in-person meeting for this kind of work.
Thank you.
Patrick, I think you were next.
Thank you so much. And I want to say that we will be reapplying for this. We did apply last time through our institute, which is called hydrocolonialism. And one of the things that we are struggling with is finding centers and institutes in some of these places, like we want to work in Mexico, and we are not finding a center there. So in the event that there is no center where you want to be working, how do you navigate that if you can't find a center there?
So two things about that. One of them, and for Mexico, I can answer it because I know we don't have members in Mexico. We have contacts with UNAM, but we don't have a member, and I don't know whether there'll be a member soon. I know that they're interested, but so specifically for Mexico, I can answer this question. The more important thing that I wanted to add is that CHCI is aware that the center or institute form is not dominant everywhere in the world, and so it is possible to have partners who are not formally a center or an institute. It could be, depending on what region you're in, a department or a college, if that's the way the humanities are organized in that particular region. And so we are open to that. What we've seen in the past too is people who have partner with organizations that were not CHCI members. We have a way of dealing with that situation. So I think we are open, and that's the best way to put it. We opened with collaboration with almost anyone who represents how the work of the humanities is done in the region in which you want to work. I think that's a general way of putting it. So that should not be something that prevents you from working in a particular region.
Thank you.
Laura?
Yeah, hi. I had a question about the location of the Humanities Institute. I'm curious if the committee would be open to an institute that had 2 sites. So for instance, in neighboring countries, but both outside the US. Aside from you maybe saying don't take on that headache organizationally, is there anything else that would disqualify that from being a consideration?
Kathy, go ahead.
Yes, let me just say that last year there were a few applications that in fact distributed, you might use that word, the work of the Institute across various sites. And the committee did not find that to be in accordance with what we really see as the benefits of the kind of synergy of having people come together over a period of time. So that is what happened last year. Very important for us to see this in the mode of a kind of summer school as well as an opportunity for research.
So if I can ask a follow-up question, if let's say we were at site A for the first 5 days and then immediately following that we're at site B for the next 5 days. So it was like a summer camp where all the campers went to a different side of the lake.
I would just say it's compelling the way you mention it, i.e. it's more field-based than it is 2 completely different sites with completely different participants. That seems to me to be persuasive, but I don't want to speak for the committee.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Vianney?
Hello. I had a question about partners. So we're developing collaborations with folks on different continents, but we also have folks here from the US who want to partner with us on this project. Can we have non-PI partners from other American universities who want to be part of this project, or is that not feasible?
So so the number of partners that are in the requirements for the application is 3 to 4. And so I think that's the main constraint here. Then you could certainly have other places in the US that are applying to be participants. So that's a different matter. But as an organizer, that would be the limiting factor, because let's say you have 2 international partners, it would leave you the possibility of partnering with 1 other US centers. And again, I'm talking only about core organizers of the GHI. There could be participation from the US, from people who apply to be participant. That's a different that's a different thing. Now,
so we can't have people who just want to be part and involved in helping to work on it, but they don't necessarily need to be PIs, but they would like to be a collaborator from the US. We can't have those folks. Because if you have your principal investigators and then you have collaborators.
That's an interesting question. I'm also thinking about the thing that we discussed before, which is having a limit of 4 people for each organizer being participating. So I think that would be another limitation for that. That said, following on what Kathy was saying about travel, and one of the concerns is the funding and being able to fund everyone. If you were to have partners who on their own funding could join the initiative, then maybe there is something that could be explored there.
Okay, I guess that's what we were thinking, because we're thinking that it would be hard to fund, like just $200,000 is hard to fund an institute that has to cover lots of continents. But we have people who would like to participate who might bring their own funding. And then if they bring their own funding, could they then be involved with helping us imagine this institute? Because I think we'll need additional funds to make it, work well. But that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think the bottom line here is that we want to have participation that as broad as possible, but that it's not to the detriment of applicants that will be coming from the rest of the CHCI membership. So we don't want to detract some of the funding that could go to people who are answering the call toward too many organizers, if that makes sense.
So if they bring their own funding, could they be collaborators? So that's my question.
I mean, personally, I don't see why not.
Okay.
If Kathy, do you have a sense?
I was just going to add that you can think about this too as a very large conference, and you might want speakers there, and the speakers are not the organizers or the participants, if you see what I'm saying. Which would allow you to have experts in the area as part of what you're doing.
Could I add just one more thing? The committee, one of the conversations we had as a committee was really to think about how to distribute the resources across the different continents. And there was one issue relating to how many graduate students, doctoral students people can bring. Some of the well-funded universities can certainly fund the travels of their graduate students, whereas other universities cannot even afford faculty travel. So this comes up all the time. And how do we resolve that? How do we resolve this? So the poorly funded institute, for instance, in India, can they bring their students on the CHCI, like GHI money? Whereas should we ask American universities fund their own students? So the conversation has been going on like this. This is the larger picture. I think it certainly is. There are ways of inviting people to participate when you have a conference, a workshop. But I think we always remind the organizers that there is this issue of equitable distribution of the resources, so then you can have a maximum participation from all three continents.
I would add that was one of the reasons why the institute tended to take place in outside of the US, that was bringing down the cost of participation for the locals who had less funding to do this. But now the situation is different because the cost of travel from the US to some of those places is becoming so high that it kind of changes what we're dealing with. I don't see any other hand raised. So if there are no additional questions, I would say to first, do not hesitate to get in. Oh, I see. Gabriela?
Yes. Hi, sorry. I was trying to find the raise your hand button. Hi. So I have a question. Is there a particular timeline for outcomes? Say certain forms require a different kind of timeline, right? So if we're looking at a podcast, it's going to be different from a publication, which is going to be different from a website. So are there any parameters that we should be taking into consideration? Yeah.
So we recommend generally that the whole length of the project be 18 months. But I understand from what you're saying, there might be some dissemination project that could extend beyond that, and for good reasons and for the benefit of the project, actually. If you're talking podcast, it's a good thing if you can extend it beyond that. One consideration is has to do with sub-awards and awards. And unfortunately, those have negotiated deadlines. So I would point that out in the proposal. And I think that as long as we are within the limits of the primary award that CHCI has received in order to do this, we would have to integrate dates that allow for that dissemination plan to take place, if that makes sense. So I would, I would point that out from the start, and if the justification for it is a specific plan like this, I think that could be probably done. Yeah, and as long as the institute is not too far into that process and remains, within a year of the start of the project.
Thank you so much.
So I think everyone here has asked questions, so I'm going to be confident that there might be no more, but if there are, please do. And if you have more questions after this, again, you can reach me by email. My email is in the address appear in the call. If you have questions about partnership, you can get in touch with Aaron, who's our membership and diversity officer. He might know more about possible partners, if that is what you're looking for. But in any case, yeah, don't hesitate. Get in touch with us. And if you have questions that come in between today and tomorrow, there's the same another session tomorrow, and you're welcome to join us back with more questions if you'd like. And I think that's it. Kathy, Lydia, Aaron.
Oh, thank you.